Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Mahua Nigudkar and I am a faculty with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. The module is titled Procedures for Working with Children in Conflict with Law, Part 1. Now moving back to what are the procedures that govern children in conflict with law. Let us discuss a little bit about the juvenile justice system. As I was mentioning earlier, the juvenile justice system is child-centered and the overall philosophy and the goal is rehabilitation and social reintegration of every child. And this philosophy is equally applicable to both groups of children, child in need of care and protection and child in conflict with law. The procedures, and this is very important for us to note, governing the juvenile justice system are socio-legal in nature and they are framed within the context of child rights and best interest of the child. So what will this module cover? This module will outline some of the procedures relevant for children in conflict with law. And these procedures will be covered in two modules, part 1 and part 2, and this is part 1. So what is a procedure? Well, a procedure is defined as an established or as official way of doing something. So there is a step-by-step sequence of activities. There will be a beginning, there will be an end, there will be systematic planning, and of course there will be a plan of action as well as accountability to ensure whether the procedures are being followed or not. And these procedures have to be followed in a same order for each and every child so that tasks that have to be done or undertaken are done correctly. Why are procedures important? And why are procedures important especially within the context of the juvenile justice system and within the context of child in conflict with law? Procedures within the juvenile justice system are based on the philosophy, principles and objectives of the Juvenile Justice Act 2015. Procedures are very important as they ensure that the mandate of the JJ Act are fulfilled and the cases of children in conflict with law are addressed in a systematic and objective manner. Procedures also provide guidelines and direction to the functionaries within the juvenile justice system about the steps to be undertaken and the way forward. Most importantly, procedures are expected to uniformly cater to all children without any kind of bias or discrimination. Philosophy and principle guiding the procedures. Juvenile justice system across the world, as I have mentioned earlier, is primarily socio-legal, as it is recognized that factors that lead to juvenile offence must be addressed while the child is within the juvenile justice system so that there is no repeat offence or recidivism and the child too starts leading a happy and constructive life. Hence, the procedures governing the juvenile justice system as per the JJ Act of India 2015, and I mentioned this earlier, are based on child rights, legal aspects of the case, social circumstances of the child and rehabilitation needs. Let's move on very briefly to child rights and juvenile justice. Adherence to child rights is an integral part of the juvenile justice system. Chapter 2 of the JJ Act 2015 outlines 16 general principles of care and protection of children, which include very important child rights and human rights such as right to dignity and worth, right to participation, best interest of the child, principle of family responsibility and principles of natural justice. Therefore, it is mandatory that all procedures at every level and every step and stage of the inquiry within the juvenile justice system, from the time the child is apprehended by the police through the processes of inquiry until the final order, all and each and every procedure are based within the principles of child rights. Two other concepts that I would like to introduce here, which are again very important for the juvenile justice system, and as I mentioned earlier, this applies equally to both groups of children, child in need of care and protection and child in conflict with law. And this module will specifically pertain to child in conflict with law. So what are these two basic framework that I am talking about? One is best interest of the child. So all procedures governing the juvenile justice system as per the JJ Act of India 2015 have to be based within the best interest of the child framework. What does best interest of the child mean? Best interest of the child means, and defined in the JJ Act, is the basis for any decision that is taken regarding the child to ensure fulfillment of his basic rights and needs, identity, social well-being and physical, emotional and intellectual development. So any decision that we take for children who are within the purview or come under the purview of the juvenile justice system, we have to take it within the parameters of what do we understand by the best interest of the child. So do read up the JJ Act 2015 where best interest of the child has been defined in the section on definitions. One more concept that is very critical for children who come within the purview of the juvenile justice system is child-friendly approach. Now this child-friendly approach has to be demonstrated by each and every functionary who is working within the juvenile justice system or who is directly or indirectly associated with the juvenile justice system or organizations which interface with the juvenile justice system. So what is a child-friendly approach? Child-friendly approach has also been defined within the JJ Act 2015. Child-friendly approach means any behavior, conduct, practice, process, attitude, environment or treatment that is humane, considerate and in the best interest of the child. So these are some of the very key frameworks, you can say, or terms or concepts that we need to remember while we are working with children within the JJ system. Let's move on to another topic, and that is key stakeholders within the juvenile justice system. This module deals with procedures. Now these procedures have to be followed or implemented or undertaken by the adults who are the key stakeholders within the juvenile justice system in terms of procedures. The child, of course, is a key stakeholder as it is his or her life that we are talking about and it is his or her rehabilitation that we are planning. But nonetheless, for rehabilitation to be effective, the functionaries would play a very, very effective role in discussion with the child and ensuring child's right to participation whenever and wherever possible. So the juvenile justice system for children in India and pertaining specifically here to children in conflict with law is a vast network of several mandated institutions and allied systems. Each stakeholder plays a very, very important role towards ensuring the efficiency and effectiveness of the system. I'll quickly outline some of the key stakeholders or functionaries within the juvenile justice system. I would encourage you to read the write-up which is there with this module so that you get further details. Go for further references, look up the reference list which is there in the module, because when we are dealing with acts, when we are dealing with laws and legislation, it is very, very important that we have accurate knowledge and information about the law and that legislation, and we build our own well-informed understanding around the topic. So now coming back to key stakeholders within the juvenile justice system. Let me run through a quick list. So the key stakeholders are A. The Supreme Court Juvenile Justice Committee. In India, there is a Supreme Court Juvenile Justice Committee which kind of governs or oversees the overall effective implementation of the juvenile justice system and how effectively the Juvenile Justice Act is being implemented across different states in India. Then we also have within each state the High Court Juvenile Justice Committee. Moving on, we have bodies such as the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights, which is a body which is an important autonomous body within the Ministry of Women and Child Development to oversee whether child rights are being fulfilled across the country, not necessarily only for children within the juvenile justice system, but in all other situations where child rights needs to be upheld, fulfilled and not violated. Then within each state, we have the State Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. Further, we have different relevant ministries, we have nodal autonomous bodies within ministries, working with ministries, relevant government departments who are working on children's issues directly, indirectly, who all become stakeholders of the juvenile justice system. Then we now come to who are the stakeholders, who are the functionaries as per mandated by the JJ Act and who directly deal with cases of children who come within the JJ system. So, for child in conflict with law, we have the Juvenile Justice Board. Then for children's institutions like children's home, special home, observation home, these are all mandated residential care facilities for different groups of children who come within the juvenile justice system. For child in conflict with law, the two residential homes are observation home, which is a residential care facility for temporary admission, and then you have a special home, which is a more long-term kind of facility for child in conflict with law. For child in need of care and protection, we have the children's homes. So now in all these homes, we have superintendents, we have probation officers, we have the caretaking staff, we have the auxiliary staff, we have counselors, we have teachers. So depending on the priority needs of each home, depending on the requirements of the child, there would be another team of functionaries working within these homes. Another very important key stakeholder specifically pertaining to child in conflict with law would be the whole free legal aid lawyer service or a free legal aid lawyer entitlement that every child has. Then we have another very important stakeholder, which is all the functionaries who are working within a very large scheme in India titled the Integrated Child Protection Scheme, the ICPS. The Integrated Child Protection Scheme is one of the very important schemes in this country which interfaces with the juvenile justice system for ensuring effective delivery mechanisms, effective implementation of the JJ Act, and there are many functionaries within the ICPS who work directly or indirectly with the Juvenile Justice Board, with the Child Welfare Committee, with groups of children, with NGOs, civil society, as the case may be. So, the ICPS functionaries working within the Integrated Child Protection Scheme again play a very vital role within the JJ system. Then we move on to NGO representatives, civil society networks, alliances, other experts who may come on board to interface with the juvenile justice system as and when it is required and as per orders of the Juvenile Justice Board, as the case may be for each individual child. In this module, we will cover the role of two key stakeholders. One of the key stakeholders within the juvenile justice system who may not be directly working within the juvenile justice system, but who is one of the most important allied systems is the police. Because when children come under alleged offence charges or children are alleged to have committed an offence, it is the police who apprehends them, it is the police who does the preliminary inquiry, prepares the papers, produces the child before the Juvenile Justice Board, thereafter police completes its investigation, submits the final report or the charge sheet, then the process of inquiry starts before the Juvenile Justice Board, and so on and so forth. So, coming back to the juvenile justice system, very briefly I would like to mention here that this network of institution and adjudicating bodies, there are some which have been directly formed as per the mandate of the JJ Act. So, the Juvenile Justice Board, the Observation Home, the Special Home, these are all mandated requirements of the JJ Act. And then you have the allied systems which work very closely or interface very closely for each and every child's case, such as the police or the hospital system or the education system, as and when required and as the case may be. So, coming back to the role of the police. Now, for the police, there are a set of procedures within the juvenile justice system that are specifically meant for children who allegedly commit offences vis-a-vis adult offenders. Now, what is the system when a child or an adult commits an offence? When a child or an adult allegedly commits an offence, the Indian Penal Code charges or other special laws, local laws, state laws, any other laws that are there in the country would apply to that child or that adult. The point of departure is the age factor. All young persons who have not completed 18 years of age as on the date of allegedly committing the offence would all come under the juvenile justice system vis-a-vis adults who would go within the criminal justice system. And then once these young persons are there within the juvenile justice system, there would be a set of very independent procedures and mechanisms for them. And as I mentioned earlier, the objective is rehabilitation, reintegration, correction probably in certain cases, but definitely not retribution or punishment. Now, what do the police do? The police have a very critical role within the juvenile justice system. It is the police who apprehend the children on the basis of offence charges, produce them before the Juvenile Justice Board, conduct investigation, submit the final report, produce the relevant documents, witnesses during the course of inquiry, and meet all other directions of the Juvenile Justice Board on a case-by-case basis. So, as I was mentioning earlier, there are some very key stakeholders within the juvenile justice system. And one of the key stakeholders pertaining specifically to child in conflict with law would be the role of the police, and the police as a key stakeholder. So, what is the role of the police? Well, I'll quickly outline some of the critical things that the police needs to do while working with child in conflict with law. 1. Conduct preliminary investigation including age verification of the child. 2. Expedite the age verification process and file the necessary report. 3. Wear civil clothes, no uniform, while accompanying the child to the Juvenile Justice Board, observation home, or for any such matters pertaining to child in conflict with law. 4. Seek prior permission before the Juvenile Justice Board if required to make enquiries with the child once the child is admitted in the observation home. 5. Expedite and complete the inquiry within the stipulated period as per the JJ Act 2015 and submit the final report. 6. During the course of inquiry, expedite the process of producing witness if and when required. And finally, expedite arrangement of police escort if and when directed by the Juvenile Justice Board. For example, escorting children for medical care, appearing for examination, taking children to their original hometown, which may not be the same place where the child has been apprehended, and so on and so forth. This is only briefly a list of what all the police are supposed to do, or rather mandated to do. I would strongly encourage you to read the JJ Act and also the Model Rules, Juvenile Justice Model Rules 2016, for getting a very clear understanding of all that the police is required to do. If in your own state has formulated the juvenile justice state rules, then do read those rules as well. So, if we want to develop a comprehensive understanding of the Juvenile Justice Act, the juvenile justice system, and the role of the key stakeholders, then we will need to read the JJ Act thoroughly, we will need to read the model rules, we will need to read juvenile justice state rules if in your state they have these rules, we will need to read the scheme, the Integrated Child Protection Scheme, and build a comprehensive understanding around this very critical topic that we are talking about. Now, moving on to another very critical stakeholder within the juvenile justice system is the Juvenile Justice Board. The Juvenile Justice Board is the place where the final orders for every child in conflict with law is decided and passed. Before we move on to the role of the Juvenile Justice Board, let me very briefly touch upon the composition of the Juvenile Justice Board. The composition of the Juvenile Justice Board as per the Juvenile Justice Act 2015 is inherently socio-legal in nature. It comprises a principal magistrate from the judiciary and 2 social work members, thereby making all processes and procedures socio-legal in nature. The 2 social work members who are appointed as social work members on the board, they are supposed to come to the board with experience of directly or having indirectly worked with children in different sectors for a certain number of years. So, the qualifications for social work members to be eligible to become part of the Juvenile Justice Board has also been outlined within the Juvenile Justice Act and the Juvenile Justice Rules. This composition of the board is very important for us to understand, because if you recall, in the first part of the module, I was mentioning about how all the procedures within the juvenile justice system are governed by the philosophy and principles of the juvenile justice system, which are based on child rights, which are based on best interest of the child. The approach has to be child friendly, and hence this composition also ensures that any kind of work that the Juvenile Justice Board is doing during any stage or step of the inquiry is inherently socio-legal in nature. So, what do we mean by socio-legal in nature? Well, socio-legal in nature, very briefly if I have to mention, there is a module on the socio-legal approach where more details will be discussed, but here I can mention that socio-legal is we look at the individual child, the social circumstances, the background, the other factors that have led to juvenile or the child committing or allegedly committing an offence. And then we have the legal dimension, the law, the procedures, what governs the juvenile justice system, and a combination of this has to be fulfilled for every child so that there is effective rehabilitation. So, this is part of the composition of the Juvenile Justice Board. If we look at the Juvenile Justice Act, if we look at the model rules or the state rules as the case may be, then we will find that there are different sections which have very clearly and in details outlined the functions, the powers and the responsibilities of the Juvenile Justice Board. So, for all those of us who are interested to know more about this area, please do read up the Act and the rules. But within this module also, we will cover it in a brief manner. Now, at every stage and step of the inquiry, there are certain procedures which are mandated by the Juvenile Justice Act. Now, what would be these different stages and steps of inquiry? Well, there would be a first production. So, when the police apprehends the child will be produced before the Juvenile Justice Board, and there is a certain stipulated time within the child is supposed to be produced before the Juvenile Justice Board. So, at the time of first production, what all the Juvenile Justice Board is supposed to do? Very briefly, I will outline some of the procedures. At the time of first production of the child before the Juvenile Justice Board, firstly, the Juvenile Justice Board has to ensure that there is compliance done by the police of all the things that the police is supposed to do before producing the child before the Juvenile Justice Board. The Juvenile Justice Board is also supposed to ensure that there has been no ill treatment of the child after apprehension, before production of the board, or general ill treatment, so that corrective action can be taken against the alleged perpetrators of such ill treatment. The Juvenile Justice Board is also supposed to interact with the child, find out more from the child, find out if there is any crisis situation that needs to be tackled, find out if there is any urgent health requirement that requires treatment, or let's say for example the child has been apprehended and he has to appear for a very important school or college examination within 2 days. The child can share this and mention this before the Juvenile Justice Board, and specific and suitable orders can be passed so that the child does not miss that examination, that exam that the child has to appear for. So, unless and until the Juvenile Justice Board interacts with the child, details of the child, what requires immediate attention, what requires long-term care, these processes of rehabilitation will not start. And here I will quickly touch upon rehabilitation again. As I have been mentioning more than once, that rehabilitation is the overarching objective of the Juvenile Justice Act, and this process of rehabilitation starts the day the child enters the juvenile justice system. Hence, the moment the child comes before the Juvenile Justice Board, it is important that the Juvenile Justice Board inquires with the child, finds out what is immediately required for the child, because if you read some of the other modules on child and childhood, perspectives on childhood, where child vulnerability has been covered, or if you read the module on children under the purview of the juvenile justice system, you will find that there are different factors that bring children within the juvenile justice system. There are different factors of vulnerability that bring children within the juvenile justice system. And hence, to somehow mitigate some of these vulnerabilities, to somehow address some of these factors, it is important that the process of rehabilitation starts the moment the child enters the juvenile justice system. Thereafter, the Juvenile Justice Board has to inquire about parents, have to inquire about guardian, family, whether the child has family, is the family in the same hometown as the Juvenile Justice Board, do they belong to another region, another city, another state probably. So, all of these details one will have to find out. One will also have to find out that though this child in front of the Juvenile Justice Board is a child in conflict with law, has come with alleged offence charges, one will also need to inquire whether this child is also a missing child and family tracing needs to be done. One will also have to be the JJ Board also has to inquire whether there are any offences done against the child, whether there are some adult perpetrators who have committed offences against this child, who may be a child in conflict with law. So, all of this inquiry needs to be done and it can start. See, these processes may not end at the first production itself, but these processes can be initiated at the time of the first production. Then comes the whole stage of bail. Now, let us say the child has to be given on bail. Then there are certain procedures governing the bail. All children are entitled to bail. However, there are some exceptions outlined in the JJ Act where bail may be denied. Now, the Juvenile Justice Board has to take a decision whether the child will go on bail. Now, let us say the child is being granted to go on bail. Then the child may be given some conditions to follow while this child is on bail. So, conditions may be, for example, going to school or attending a vocational guidance or training center. Let us say the child has got embroiled into a situation of addiction, then encouraging or directing the parents to move towards de-addiction treatment for the child, or the child may be needing some kind of counseling services, some kind of therapeutic care, or the family may be needing some kind of livelihood options. So, a whole range of options are available before the Juvenile Justice Board, that when the child is going out on bail, then what are the certain conditions that the family can meet or the guardian can meet or the child probably himself can meet while the child is out on bail. Because as I mentioned earlier, the process of rehabilitation starts the day the child enters the juvenile justice system. Hence, while the child is on bail, it is important to supervise, to guide and monitor the child, so that the child's process of rehabilitation has already started, even though the child is not admitted in an observation home or living in a residential care facility within the juvenile justice system. So, there would be a certain set of procedures that govern the Juvenile Justice Board while the child is out on bail. Now, then comes another stage where the child may be admitted in an observation home. Let us say for some reason the child is either not going out on bail, or bail has been denied, or family has not been traced, there is nobody to take the child out on bail, or family for the moment or the guardian is not really willing to take the child out on bail immediately, the child himself probably is not willing to go out on bail. So, there could be very many reasons why in a small number of cases, the majority of children do go on bail, there could be a small number of cases of children where bail has not happened, and there could be different reasons for the same. Now, when the child is not going out on bail for different reasons, as I just mentioned, the child will be admitted in an observation home. Now, the observation home is a residential care facility for the child, and it is a temporary care facility. The child will stay in the observation home till the bail processes and procedures are met, or till the case gets closed, whichever happens, as the case may be on an individual case by case basis. Now, when the child is getting admitted in an observation home, again there would be a set of procedures that would govern the Juvenile Justice Board at the time of the admission of the child in the observation home. Now, while the child is in the observation home, there are some mandatory requirements that the child will be produced before the Juvenile Justice Board within a stipulated number of days. So, it is not to say that the moment the child is admitted in the observation home, the child will not come before the Juvenile Justice Board court till bail happens or till the final order happens. It's very important that the child and the Juvenile Justice Board are in contact and communication with each other. Thereafter, the Juvenile Justice Board works closely with the probation officer, works closely with some of the functionaries of the Integrated Child Protection Scheme. They may direct for certain reports from the probation officer. There is a social investigation report, an individual child care plan may start getting developed. So, if you look at the Act and if you look at the rules, you will find there are different kinds of records and reports that are required, and this is required to have a holistic and a comprehensive understanding of the child's situation along with the offence charge, so that at the time of the final order, a rehabilitative order that is relevant for the child's life can be made. Now moving on to another stage of inquiry, and that stage of inquiry begins after the police has submitted their final report or the charge sheet. After the police has submitted their final report and the charge sheet, the child may come before the Juvenile Justice Board. The Juvenile Justice Board would ask the child whether the child is accepting of these offence charges or not, or in common terminology pleading guilty or not. Though pleading guilty is not really a terminology within the Juvenile Justice Act, but often in common usage these words are asked. Primarily what I mean to say is the offence charges will be read out to the child, and the child has this clear option to state his or her view and state whether he is accepting of the offence charges or not. Now let us say, for example, the child is accepting of the offence charge, then there is a section 18 of the Juvenile Justice Act which outlines different rehabilitative options for the child. So the Juvenile Justice Board has a wide range of options for children who say that yes, I am accepting of this offence charge, and so then the consequences will follow as laid down and as governed by the JJ Act of 2015. Now, one of the principles of juvenile justice system is also that institutionalization will be the last option for all categories of children, irrespective of whether the child has committed an offence or not. Thus, if you see section 18 and if you see the final orders of the Juvenile Justice Board, all children are not admitted into the special home. Most of the children, or rather majority of the children, would go back home. They may go back home under advice, under admonition, or the board may direct for group counseling, the board may direct for community service options, the board may direct that the child be kept under supervision under a probation officer or another fit person, as the case may be, as per procedures governing the JJ Act 2015. And in a small percentage of children, the children may be admitted in a special home. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the module, the special home is a residential care facility for children. Special home is not a place for punishment. It is a place for rehabilitation, and thus in the special home, based on the unique needs of the child, there would be a rehabilitative program designed for the child. So the child may go into schooling, may go into higher education, vocational training, the child may be sent for counseling, therapeutic care, group work, group activities, as the case may be. So in the special home, the whole philosophy is that while this child is in a closed institution, is in a residential care facility for a stipulated period of time, the child will be guided in a manner in which once the child goes back into mainstream society, the child can lead a productive and a happy, constructive life. So some children would go into the special home, but as I mentioned earlier, not all children would go into the special home. Now there are also procedures for children, young boys and some girls who are between age 16 and 18 years who come under alleged heinous offences. Now one of the changes that has happened in the new JJ Act 2015, which has replaced JJ Act 2000, is that offences have been categorized. They have been categorized into serious, into heinous, and the meanings of all of this has been given in the JJ Act 2015. So there are some procedures that would govern boys and girls between 16 and 18 years of age who come under alleged heinous offences, and these procedures I will touch upon them in part 2 of the next module. Now coming back to this module, so as I was mentioning, and I would like to summarize here, that as I was mentioning, there are certain set standard procedures that govern children in conflict with law. That is, children who come within the juvenile justice system under alleged offence charges or allegedly they have committed offences. And I use the word alleged because these offence charges need to be proved through due process of law and inquiry as governed by the JJ Act 2015. So just because a child is come into the Juvenile Justice Act as a child in conflict with law, it doesn't necessarily mean that this child has been proved to have committed an offence. Now let us go back quickly to section 18 of the Juvenile Justice Act, or little ahead of that, when the child is being asked whether the child is accepting of an offence charge or not. If the child is not accepting of that offence charge and states that no, I have not done this, I am not accepting of this offence charge, then a process of inquiry will start. Now through this process of inquiry, if it is found that there is no evidence against the child and it is found that the child has not committed this offence charge, the child will be acquitted of all offence charges with which the child was brought into the juvenile justice system, and offence charges as mentioned in the final report of the police. Once the child is acquitted of the offence charge, the child ceases to be a child in conflict with law. Now such a children, for some reason, does not have a family or a family support, then such children can be transferred to under the Child Welfare Committee as a child in need of care and protection. So there will be a small group of children, a very small group, who may not have family, who may not have family support, may be a child in conflict with law. As per the JJ Act, such children can be transferred through a certain set of procedures to the Child Welfare Committee as a child in need of care and protection. The third part is, let's say a child has said, I am not accepting the offence charges, but through the process of inquiry as per procedures, it is found there is evidence, or it is found that yes, the evidence shows that the child is found to have committed an offence, then again section 18 of the Juvenile Justice Act 2015 will apply, which has those rehabilitative measures. So in summarizing or in concluding this module, I would say that there are certain standard procedures that govern the Juvenile Justice Act. The overarching principle and philosophy of the Juvenile Justice Act is child rights based. The overall objective is rehabilitation and social reintegration of the child. And when children come within the juvenile justice system as a child in conflict with law, if we are able to effectively utilize the rehabilitative provisions and options given in the Juvenile Justice Act, then the child will go back to society or will start living his life in mainstream society as productive, happy and constructive young beings. Thank you so much.